Sorry, I'm having real computer problems. Does everyone agree with me that computers are horrible? Anna, you and Meg, or Maggie and Anna have switched.
We've switched places?
Yep, you switched places.
Why?
I don't know. I didn't do it.
Okay.
Give me a sec.
Just walk in.
Why?
There's a little bit of stuff.
You use your shirt. Go! Nick and William were gone. Okay. Will. All right, now it works. Wow, this was all broadcast live. Okay, so tomorrow we'll finish up the war. Wednesday, DBQ on that. Yes, that. The ratification battle, that kind of stuff for the Treaty of Versailles. The DBQ has, it's an older one, so it has 9 documents, but I'm going to take 2 out. One was a poison pill, and the other, I'll find another one that isn't very good. The old DBQs, they used to put a document in that was on purpose to be a bad one, which I always hate to trick people. I don't know why they did that. But I'll get rid of the poison pill one. I've never liked that document. And another one, so you have 7 documents. You must use 6 in your DBQ. Sound good? You have 3 minutes to do it.
Sounds about right.
The winner is going to play with Nazi Barbie. No, you got to finish. You have to win to play. You can't play with Nazi Barbie yet. Yes.
So it's on any of those issues?
Well, it's going to be on those issues, yeah. So it'll be on those issues of the ratification of the Treaty of Versailles. Don't forget to think about other treaties. Remember, you have to get some kind of synthesis. If we're talking about the Treaty of Versailles, you have to add context, so it's about the whole World War I era, that sort of thing. You have to obviously get as many facts as you can, but the big thing is good explanation, good explain, good reading of the documents, know who wrote them, or at least what their point of view was, you know, that half stuff. And so where do we finish? I think we got to the Food Act, didn't we? Oh, and who ran the Food Administration? Hubert Heaver, exactly. Hubert Heaver and Bernard Barrault, what was his organization that he ran? And they were going to get, the United States would have weapons ready to fight by when?
1990.
Yeah, so after the war was over. And why did banks, why was there a drumbeat by banks to enter the war?
Because they were shipping out allied bombs.
Yeah. And to get paid, what had to happen to get their money back? Who?
Yeah.
The Germans.
I said Europe.
Oh, Europe would win. Europe.
Oh, I'm struggling today.
It is a Monday. And we still have 4 more weeks till spring break.
I thought it was only 3.
It's 4. Yeah, 4 weeks. Yay! And I'm just going to give you homework for every day in spring break.
That's not fair.
You're welcome. Well, I'll be on vacation. Well, I'll be on the beach. Yes, you will. Where are you going? Ooh, Wisconsin in the spring. That'd be fun. But there will be a little bit of homework, but not a lot. Everything's relative. Because we do have the test. Huh? It is freedom, I know. But do I trust Wisconsin? And what was the note that tried to get Mexico into the war? Zimmerman, no. Okay, so let's go ahead and get up to the steps where the United States, or to the ratification. And the first big thing we have to get to is, okay, so the War Industries Board, the Food Board was another one. We don't need all of them. But now we got to finance. How are we going to pay for this thing? How to finance the war. Because every war has serious economic issues. The government's going to have to spend a lot of money, raise money quickly, and it's going to cause a real economic problem. They try to do it in 2 ways. First off, bonds, And that's where you get those Liberty loans. The idea is people would loan money to the government and get paid back with interest. The problem is, as they borrow more money in a booming economy, interest rates would go up. Another thing they would do is taxes. Remember, the 16th Amendment was ratified back in 1913, so that allowed for an income tax. And so as the war went on, eventually the United States would keep raising the interest or the marginal income tax rates. Eventually it would be the highest marginal income tax rate by 1918 would be 70%. Now, that was 70% only for the very top incomes. These are marginal rates. I'll explain that more later. But let's just put it this way. Nobody paid even close to 70% of their actual income. The rates go essentially in tiers up. But the point is, taxes and bonds to raise money. Yeah.
What does it say?
Liberty loans. The problem was this. They didn't tax enough. The taxes should have been higher. A lot higher. Because what it meant is they had to borrow more. Because they knew they were going to borrow more, and debt's going to go up a lot. And that's not necessarily bad. The problem is that it's going to cause an economic problem that happens every single war. When you borrow more, will help an issue that already happens in war, inflation. The more you borrow, the better chance will be inflation. In fact, that's how you know if you borrow too much as a government. Interest rates go up, inflation goes up. You haven't borrowed too much if interest rates are low and inflation is low. It's not a natural amount. You just got to figure out when it happens. Well, inflation skyrocketed. Prices went up 100% in 1918 and did it again in 1919. Did you catch that? Prices doubled and doubled again. Inflation. And there's lots of reasons for this. Because of bonds, you're going to have interest rates will go up. And that will encourage inflation. But the other two reasons, this always happens in war. Prices always go up for very basic reasons. Government demand. Government's buying everything and paying top dollar. If they're buying everything, that means there's less stuff for everybody else and prices go up. Because government is buying it all. We can see the same thing. This happened in my lifetime, really bad in the late 60s, early 70s, where government, because of the Vietnam War and other reasons, were buying so much stuff, borrowing money because of the Vietnam War, and we had what's called stagflation, and we'll get to that when we get to the 70s. Yeah.
What did you say about government?
Government's buying everything. That's demand. Government demand. The other thing that's happening is consumer goods or consumer supply of goods is going down. There's not as many consumer goods because companies are now selling or producing materials for war. Before the Industrial Revolution, of course, this would be an issue. You would see it, but not near as much as an industrialized war. We're now a consumer economy by then, or growing into one, and people have got to buy stuff, and they're not producing it. Prices go up. You combine with this, and you have a real big problem. Wage earners, wages, did not keep up. Wages went up. There was wage inflation, but not as much as there was for prices. Wages did not keep up with the prices of goods. During the war, there were a few strikes and issues about that, but when the war ended, they're going to lead to an explosion of workers striking, who for very justified reasons said, we sacrificed a lot during the war, yet prices are still really high. Wages have not kept up. This will help lead to what's going to be called the Red Scare. And there's one more thing, farmers. Farmers boomed. This was the last real golden age of small farmers in the United States. Everything they grew, people wanted. You know, in Europe, they wanted every bushel of wheat, or for that matter, every cow, sheep, or horse you could produce in the United States. And it rained a little bit more as a relatively wet decade. So production went up, prices went up, farmers were booming. Of course, then they borrowed more, they increased production. When the war ended, there's always going to be an economic depression. This one was bad. And farm prices tanked, and farmers never recovered. In 1923, the farm economy collapsed. And it's never returned to those levels to this day. To this day. So that's one thing we got to give out farmers. Small farmers would boom, and then when prices dropped, it just collapsed. And then the Great Depression hit, prices went down even more, and then it quit raining. The Dust Bowl. You've probably heard of that. So it was a bad, cruel trick to small farmers, and they never recovered, ever. So that was an effort to finance the war. Limited success. World War II, the United States would do much better. Yeah, they borrow a lot, but they would raise the highest marginal income tax rate went up to 93% in World War II. In fact, it almost went to 100. Just about passed in 1943. And those really high rates did a great job of tamping down inflation. Also encouraged innovation. A lot of things, we'll get to that a little bit later. People get the very tip top of how to pay didn't particularly like paying that much, but that's another story. So that's financing the war. Not as big success, and this is going to lead to, or at least make this issue bigger. The last big thing about mobilization is the mobilizing social unity. Getting everybody riled up together to fight the war. And this is where we get the total war. All of this is elements of it, but this is tying everything together. This is why I gave you the Espionage Act. I'm sorry it's graded, but I forgot to record it. I literally, going to the third period, I realized, oh, I have to write these things down. So I'll get it back to you tomorrow. But mobilizing all people for this. And the number one element of this, remember it started with getting people to volunteer or to not protest the draft because nobody volunteered, was the Creel Commission. The Creel Commission is originally the Office of Public Administration. I'm sorry, Office of Public Information. But soon the Office of Public Information was named after the leader of it. George Creel was a movie producer in the very new film capital of Hollywood. So he already had a good idea how to use media to manipulate people, and he would become a master of it. And this is the first time you get the real use of modern media. Newspapers, posters, and movies were very effective at putting the message out. And remember, the message is the enemy. Fear the enemy. Hate the enemy. Root out those who help the enemy. So the media. And they would also send, originally there were 30 Minutemen, then they would go to 15, and then the 4 Minutemen. And they were men who would go out and give speeches, very, very nationalistic speeches. And more the word they would use was patriotic, even though this isn't really patriotism, per se, it's more nationalism. But out there pushing that we must go to war, that the United States is fighting a righteous cause, to make the world safe for democracy. Is this for me?
Yeah.
That's the thing about pen, you're going to cross out stuff. It's just hopefully we practice it. Maybe it won't be that much. So you're fine. So I'm just giving you a bad time when I say that. So go out and push this. Another big thing was the flag. For the first time in American history, in fact, this is really a war thing. You can see little elements of this in Britain and the turn of the century and a few other places. This kind of glorification of the flag. It never really happened before. Yeah, the flag was a symbol, but it wasn't as big a deal, for example, the Civil War, as regimental colors, not the flag. But it really became a show of patriotism, your love of the flag. And even though they kind of talked about these rules, this is where they became popular during World War I. if you mishandle the flag, to show that you're a real patriot, you must do the certain procedure and how you handle it. If the flag falls on the ground, what are you supposed to do? A certain way you burn it, and you have to bury the ashes, or you truly don't love your country. And they would do all these flag days and flag things. Everyone had to have a flag. And this is really new. Had never really happened before. We'll see it again, and we'll get to the Cold War and Vietnam War as lapel pins on flags. And you would see it again after the September 11th attack, especially during the Iraq War. Got a flag pin. It was a big deal. It was an issue in the presidential election in 2004 and 2008. Flag pins. So we are still very susceptible to this kind of attitude. The Pledge of Allegiance, no one said the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance was done 16 years before the United States entered the war as by a man by the name of Edward Bellamy. And what it was is he won a contest to explain why republics are the best form of government to ensure rights. And the Pledge of Allegiance went, I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the country for which it stands. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was the Pledge of Allegiance. It was supposed to be generic for republics. During the war, it started being a thing you would say to the flag to show your allegiance to the flag. And more they would begin to add words. In 1921, it became standardized. I pledge allegiance to the flag. That was added because of World War I. And then what part was added because of we're not godless commies? 1951, or 1951, I don't know. And since you're doing this allegiance to the flag and pledge your loyalty or making an oath to the flag, how do you do that? I pledge allegiance to the flag. I don't know why in 1942 they stopped doing that. Could have been any reason. I can't think of any on the top of my head.
Why did they change it to this?
There had already been a couple different polls for that, for your heart. And so they just use that. But, yeah. It's funny seeing a group of kids all doing this when you think about the connotations of it. I find that kind of frightening and interesting at the same time. And then they would start doing flag days and then kiss the flag days, where they would bring flags to offices or to companies or to schools, and everybody would line up and kiss the flag to show their loyalty. We'd all line up and kiss. Think about that. If you don't kiss the flag, what are you? Kiss the flag. If you don't do it, what are you? You're going to kiss the flag? What are you then? A traitor. Then we beat you up. Because we all know, if you were disloyal to the United States, and you can't kiss the flag. Why? What will happen to you if you're disloyal to the United States and try to kiss the flag? Your lips will catch fire, right? It's like a vampire with garlic. The flag just, right? If somebody really was a spy in the United States, and they said, we're going to have Kiss the Flag Day, what would that person do? They'd be the first one in line, wouldn't they? Let me kiss it, I pledge. Why would they do things like this? It has nothing to do with patriotism. I don't have one. I have Civil War, 2 from the I don't know why I don't have one. I mean, I just kind of ran out of room.
So
And I like the Civil War one, and I like the 2 Revolutionary War ones. So
what flag do you send up to me?
I switched Civil War, Revolutionary War. We just go back and
You
forth.
tell them.
I tell them which one. It's really exciting. They're all, and they make a big deal. It's really cool. What are you doing? They also would do this, loyalty oaths. That became the next big thing. Everybody would come in and do an oath to the country. Because as we all know, if you don't give an oath to the country, you're not a real patriot. So they all give these loyalty oaths. And it became a big deal, loyalty oaths. Got to do loyalty oaths. Got to prove you're a real American. They do the same thing after World War II. Be loyalty oath mania after World War II. And you had to do a loyalty oath. Yeah, I'm not kidding. We would all do a loyalty oath. Sometimes 2 or 3 a day. What are you doing? There's a name for it. What's going to happen out of this is, first of all, we've already called it war madness, but it's called coercive patriotism, where it's going to just enforce this constant nationalism. And that is a way that it roots out. In fact, it becomes really hard to even imagine dissent, no dissent. Because let's say we did do that in this class and Amy said, I'm not going to kiss the flag. Well, what's going to happen to him? We will all ridicule and attack him. I know we do that anyways, but now we have a good reason to. Because he won't kiss the flag. Right? Who else won't kiss it? Yeah. Emily pointed at you. No, and the thing is, even if you're like, nah, that is a silly reaction. God, I don't want to kiss the flag when all these sits and people are, all people with colds. But after seeing the way we mistreated him, everybody else will do it, and it works. Yes, coercive patriotism, no dissent.
No dissent.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, basically, it's making sure there's no dissent. No one's going to step out of line from that company line of the country. You know, the basically what the Creel Commission is pushing, this idea that we're all together in this war. So when it comes right down to it, this is a measure of control. This is control. This is how you control people. Now you can make the argument that, hey, if we don't do this, we'll lose. That's an argument. But clearly they're doing it. And it's an easy step once you get that to laws that ban free speech. Even though I don't really need them, we're doing it on our own. Before we get to that, I almost forgot. There's a group going to be called the American Protective League. There are going to be other groups like this, but this would be the biggest one. And the American Protective League will be civic leaders, even involving the police and local government, ultra-nationalistic groups. They're going to root out those who are not patriotic, those who are not truly American, root out anti-German, anti-American feeling. And the anti-American feeling will come, I'll get to it a little bit more later. And so this would be a big, it's not government organized, but the Creel Commission made sure these guys had lots of information, support, push them as an example of what Americans should be. Yeah.
This is part of the
Yeah, this is part of it. This would be like a technically independent group of citizens who would organize this.
And what is it? Just a group of people.
Yeah, a group of people. It would involve civic leaders and that sort of thing, these supposedly civic leaders, but they're rooting out dissent. They're going to go look for people who aren't real Americans. So it's getting on the verge of vigilantism. And it's a short step then where you have, of course, then once you get people start thinking in this way, acts like the Espionage Act and the Sedition Act make perfect sense. They seem to fit in. This is what we need. We need laws to crack down on people. Now, we know what the Espionage Act was. And that's actions that support the enemy. That's vague, that's open. The Sedition Act literally means no criticism of government in war. Now that law is no longer on the books. But it's basically saying any criticism of the government during war is helping the enemy. By definition, therefore, these laws are anti-democratic. By definition, a republic where the people pick their leaders, there has to be a choice. There has to be a choice. And if you're saying criticism of the government and power is illegal, there can be no choice. So by definition, this undermines democracy or destroys it, by definition. And most people put something to that effect and really struggle with it. You say, well, what more though? We got to win. Yeah, that's why this total war is so scary. You can make the argument, and if you're legitimately a threat, you can see where you might need something like this. But it also could be used by somebody just to take power. So this is actually pretty scary stuff. That's why total war is such a big deal. By the way, is it constitutional? The Supreme Court would rule on this. 1918. The court case is Schenck. Schenck. I can't. Why am I talking like this now all of a sudden? I got my nasally voice. Schenck versus the United States. Schenck. Versus the U.S. Schenck. Okay, now it's going to hurt my throat. What the Supreme Court ruled is that these kind of laws are not protected in the, I'm sorry, I'll backtrack a little bit. Free speech, or an absolute freedom of speech, is not in the First Amendment of the Constitution. The First Amendment of the Constitution does not protect all speech, period. The First Amendment does not. The First Amendment does not protect all speech. It does not protect it all. In fact, the Constitution is very clear. Nowhere does it say anybody has freedom of speech. What it says is that Congress cannot abridge the right to freedom of speech. So Congress cannot pass laws saying, for example, males cannot talk. That's abridging their freedom of speech. But Congress can still define what speech is. And so they can limit what that is. And what they did is, it's called the Doctrine of Public Safety. Congress can limit the freedom of speech if it protects public safety. What they ruled in the Supreme Court was, basically what they said was, Charles Evans Hughes, the Espionage Act, or banning speech like the Espionage Act is the same as banning somebody from yelling fire in a crowded theater because they thought it'd be fun to watch the panic. You can't go into a crowded theater and yell panic. Yell panic, panic. You can't go into a crowded theater and yell fire. Does that seem logical? Same deal then. By speaking out against the draft, you're potentially hurting public safety. So they can ban speech if it affects public safety, and boy, does that give them a lot of leeway what public safety is. And there's a logic to it, and there's also, I think, something to fear about this. That's what makes it such an important law. And so, would there be opposition? Most people know. Most people don't want to get beat up. Most people don't want to be lynched. Most people don't want to be attacked. But if you would, leading the opposition to Americans' involvement in the war, and we're talking about Americans, so everyone got that, leading the opposition would be socialists. Socialists would be, not all socialists, but many socialists. Yeah, this is going to be the opposition to social unity. Yeah. What?
Trying to figure out how to categorize that.
Or just put down opposition to the war. And socialists, the way they look at it is, this is purely making money for, remember, they're socialists for the capitalists. The capitalists are going to get rich off this war. In fact, the way they said was, it's workers killing workers and the capitalist gets rich. Now, it's obviously more complex than that, but there's clearly truth to that too. And they said, there's no reason why we're fighting in a European war to defend the British Empire, if not for the fact that the banks are going to get rich and the industry is going to get rich. Workers fighting workers. The largest socialist labor union was the International Workers of the World. We have mentioned them before. They're kind of the successor to the Knights of Labor. They're going to be called the Wobblies. International Workers of the World, the IWW. They were big in Butte. Butte had 100,000 people. Copper, needed for brass casing for shells, and also for copper wire because of the all the electrical uses. And so Butte was booming. The Wobblies were big in Butte. And the Wobblies, not only did they oppose the war, they were a pretty radical socialist union. In fact, if companies would not agree to negotiate, like mining, the big miners, they would use sabotage. They try to break machines and that sort of thing to force them to negotiate with the union. Their symbol would be a black cat. Sabo cat, they call it. Sabotage cat. So I think that's a great name for a cat. If you have a cat, Sabo cat. Got it? Who has a cat? No one has a cat here? What's your cat's name? Sabo cat. You're the only one with a cat? I have a cat.
What's your cat's name?
Why do you people hate America?
What's your cat's name?
Sabo cat. I want to name my cat Vitamin. My wife did not want to name my cat Vitamin. I thought that was a great name, Vitamin.
What's your cat's real
What's my cat's real name? Sabo cat.
name?
Grace.
Vitamin. I like vitamin.
Ah, Vitamin or Tank. I wanted Tank too. She's
Those are kind of cool cat names.
all right, so the Wobblies. The Wobblies opposed this. Frank Little was an IWW organizer. And in August of 1917, Little went to Butte. And he gave a couple speeches where thousands of workers, miners, came out to listen to him. And basically what he's speaking out against the Selective Service Act. The American Protective League also did a rally, and thousands came to support the war. Well, Little was dragged that night after his second speech. He was drugged out of his hotel by members of the American Protective League and the Butte Police, which were kind of cahoots together. And they proceeded to beat him, tie him to a back of a car, drive him through the streets of Butte, and then hung him from a railway trestle. He was lynched, tortured to death. They tortured him to death. Somewhere while dragging him is probably when he was killed. This is going to be one of the most famous pro-war actions. There would be a lot of pro-war violence. But Little, this national news, happened to Butte, but this is all over the country. And who was blamed? Yeah, Little and the IWW. This would be the beginning of the end. Because they were un-American, the IWW would be crushed. It was a pretty big union. Does this remind you of another event? Do you remember the Haymarket Affair and the Knights of Labor? Similar thing. Frank Little, the Wobblies would be destroyed. Their leader was a guy by the name of Big Bill. He was not that, wasn't it? His parents didn't name him Big Bill. But Big Bill Haywood was the leader of the IWW, and he would be imprisoned, then exiled. They sent him to Russia, which in the middle of the Civil War, soon to be the Soviet Union. That should give you an idea of what was going on at this time. Eugene Debs, remember the head of the Socialist Party, ran for president in 1912. He would be arrested for speaking out against the draft. And in fact, he refused to even participate in this trial against him because he said the Espionage Act was anti-American, anti-liberty, anti-everything he stood for. And Debs would be arrested. That's when he would run from a jail cell in 1920 and get 1 million votes. Because he was arrested because speaking out against the draft. And so, that's what happened here. But the big reason is, who's the target then? Remember it all started with war badness and anti-German, but who's the target now? Why were they so scared of socialists? No, you said it again. Well, they already had that spirit of Marx, but what about this Leningrad? Who's this Leningrad? I don't think we've talked about Lenin. What happened what happened in Russia? The Bolshevik rebellion. It's no coincidence that you have this seen as another threat to America. Germans and socialists. And so what we have is, while this is going on, new heading, the Russian revolutions. There's going to be 2 Russian revolutions that are going to have great impact on the United States. The first one happened a month before the United States entered the war. March 1917, it's called the March Revolution. (1917). The war had been going horribly for Russia. 1915, they were basically defeated but stayed in the war. In one major offensive they tried in 1916, right about here, the Russians lost 1 million men, killed, wounded, or missing in 2.5 months. So the Brusilov offensive. There were food shortages. Workers could not afford the most basic necessities of life. The Tsar had lost credibility. In fact, he ran away from the capital to act like he could be the general commander-in-chief of the army because he had basically lost control. But then in March, there were food riots, tough winter, and they did what they always did. They sent the troops out. Similar thing happened in 1905. The troops came out and shot and dispersed the revolution then. March 1917, what did the troops do? Anybody want to guess? Just like what happened in the United States back in 1877 during the Great Upheaval, and just like what happened during Shays' Rebellion back in 1787, the troops joined. And once this happened, it was a mutiny. The army refused to fight. They refused to follow orders. In fact, it happened so fast. The Tsar was basically told, you got to abdicate now. Give it to your son. But it was too late. The Tsar abdicated, but his son wasn't going to get the throne anyways. Remember, his son died of hemophilia. And what we have is a provisional government took power. And they're going to create a democratic republic. At least they said they would. This is a month before the United States entered the war. President Wilson would really grab onto this. For Wilson, this would justify his declaration of war. Wilson could say in April, we are fighting this war to help this new democratic republic. Remember the World State for Democracy? It's for this. See, we're already doing it. We entered the war, we help this new democratic Russia, then it gets spread throughout Europe. We'll make a better world. This is going to be called the Kerensky government. Alexander I. Kerensky was the most vocal member of this new government. He'd be war minister and then premier. And they didn't realize the reason why the revolution happened. It's to end the war. The Kerensky government decided to stay in the war. They decided we're going to stay in the war. They looked at it this way. If we stay in the war, at the peace treaty, we'll get a better deal. If we leave the war, all our sacrifice will be for nothing. This should remind you of something. Remember Antietam? Lincoln needed a victory, he felt, politically, so he could issue what? Emancipation. Similar idea, stay in the war, disaster. That summer of 1917, in coordination with a failed French offensive right here, they tried another offensive right about here, towards Brest-Litovsk, and it was disastrous. A couple initial successes, and then the army just quit. Mutinied, and literally the army walked home. By August 1917, the army had fallen apart. Army total mutiny. And that spread to the countryside. It was disastrous. And that is where we bring someone by the name of Lenin into it. Yeah.
Is that its own revolution?
Say it again.
Is that its own revolution?
It's not quite a full revolution. It's more, it was just, think about dissolving, but that was set up. Remember the Bolshevik Revolution? It's coming. They would try in August and fail. Who is the guy they brought in who knew how to help Alexis Hemophilia? What happened to Rasputin?
He died. They threw him in a river, didn't he? Then he like didn't die.
He's still alive today. He lives in Circle, Montana. Obviously, where else would he live?
Maybe do not.
That winter of 1916, 1917, a lot, you can see the nobility of Russia going, uh-oh, we might lose everything we got. Let's get if we get rid of Rasputin, that might help the Tsar stay in power. And so a couple noblemen decided to try to kill him. And not go through the entire process of it, but this Rasputin, this big guy who drank more than anybody else, they didn't know what they were going to do. And so but they knew he liked to drink. So they invited Noam to drink, and then they said they were going to go, and they had something about, we have lots of women for you. But he went there, and they were going to give him, they laced his wine with enough poison, they claimed, to kill 20 people. They claimed. And after some initial, like, I don't want to drink this, he downed an entire jug, like a gallon of this wine with all this poison. And what happened? He was kind of like woozy, like staggering, but no real effect. Oh, then he died. Remind me, I'll finish the rest of the story tomorrow, okay? Then we'll finish the war. Sound good?
So the kids over all of them?
Yeah, so basically, but the big thing is the ratification battle. So you got to know what these are, but especially Article 10 and then what happened to ratification, why it wasn't ratified. And then tomorrow we will finish the war, and I'll talk about certain other things, especially liberal and conservative foreign policy, which will help you with the ratification. Sound good?
What is it doing?
It's gonna be on Wednesday.
Oh, I missed that when I went to.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. DBQ Wednesday. Is that for me? Is that a gift? Oh, we Tiffany Dicker. She called you a traitor. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
About time we got here, David. We can begin now. Just you and I.
Sorry, I was running late. Traffic.
So I said the test is just going to be Beatles songs.
Totally gonna pass this then.
I'm just going to play a Beatles song, and you have to say who the main author of the song was and what album. All right. Sound good?
Yeah, I can do it.
Good.
I have a lot of
Then what do you do
about all these songs.
Oh, which one do you have?
I have Revolution in their head. I got another one called,
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
I don't remember what it was called, Mr. Char gave it to me last week. That's what I remember, with like a really in-depth analysis.
Oh, really? That'd be cool.
I'll definitely bring it by.
Yeah, let me see it.
I just said
I do want to see it.
yeah, like
No, but-
I also don't care about
I know, Russell will be right
Yeah,
there.
bunch of what?
magazines.
because I saw I was
Cool.
reading for it. I saw it, so I was like, oh geez. I guess
We all went to the Saturday and Really
feel like if you could
Wait,
just
is that one?
you over.
What?
You
What's
be insane.
Oh,
Like,
oh,
are you just fired up?
Let's hear it. You're still, what the heck?
He was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna retire.
I think I lost
He's like, oh yeah, that almost man part.
Yeah, yeah.
it. You guys can. Yeah, you can.
I don't know, you're very control.
I think Russell and I are up for it. It's not the same, like, not at all.
I'm on
I was gonna comment on like that, and Russell was like, sort of like, oh
Yeah, the shot.
If he hit Jordan in the head, it's the price he has to pay. He should have known better. So, I mean, not in the mission.
More than you is everything.
Is it the pickle? You know, it's not
yeah, I was like, I have a water.
I think
Wait, go back.
he was at Vermont still.
You're missing the pickle.
It's not like close. It's like
Well played, thank you.
like water.
Ah! Robert, you want to give it a go? First things first, before we get started. Are you on the Google? Who here is sick in this classroom? Who's good at coming out with a cold? They're five.
Yeah.
The scourge of immunity. Okay, so Robert's the last one. Yes. One throw in Mr. Carter's room, and someone in there threw it out.
I like that you
Mr. McCarter. I want to call him Mr. McCarter. Mr. McCarter. All right. So, did I leave the mouse up there? All right. So we have. Okay, everybody, real quick. He's been kept silent by the aliens and the weather gun. Because there's a weather gun, right? Yeah, we know there's a weather gun. But now he's bravely come to speak to us. Of course, unfortunately, this might be the last thing we ever see, but it's worth it. Okay, let me move it over there. Give me 1 sec, I gotta get it on. All right, here we go. No, I'm talking. Thanks a lot, Robert.
All right, so some quick things about Area 51. It is an Air Force base, 83 miles from Las Vegas. The purpose, at least what the Air Force and military says it's for, is to develop new aircraft and weapons to be used. There's a lot of different names that they call it. They call it Groomley, Paradise Ranch, Dreamland. And officially, the government refers to it as the National Classified Test Facility. So yeah.
What?
Well, I don't know. Those are just pictures. A lot of it's really hard to find pictures that are like real, so they're just kind of
You mean real?
yeah. So
You're trying to tell me that Hitler and this Trump the last because it's hard to make these
this
out.
is the alien. This is like the real alien, and I don't know. They sell it at Kmart, like obviously plastic.
They sell aliens at Kmart?
They say the ones at Kmart were planted or like government like made them sell it so they could like cover it up.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. What people who believe in this believe is that the aliens that crashed at Roswell were taken to Area 51, and then at Area 51, they were doing reverse engineering of UFOs, trying to like rebuild it and conducted autopsies. And then there's also other beliefs that like the aliens are working at the lab and at the ranch. They also build weather control, time travel, teleportation, and underground railroad, which doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's underground.
Hillary is obviously an alien. She's so all the modern proof basically comes from this one guy who, on his deathbed, gave like an interview. I guess he worked at Area 51. And he said he did reverse engineering of UFOs, and he said the aliens come from planet Quintumnia, which is 45 years away, which I don't know what that means.
Light years.
It takes, yeah. Aliens travel in saucer-shaped craft, and he said that sometimes there were like fights between the aliens and the workers, that some people died, like 19 people died. And yeah, pretty much all the proof is like kind of just speculation. I don't know, fake videos. Actual uses, they developed the U-2 here, the 117, a flying pancake. Yeah, so they really just developed a lot of airplanes and other missile type weapons. And the Air Force has frequently said that there's no like aliens or alien technology at the base, but they do acknowledge that there is like a base there. Yeah, and the true believers in the conspiracy just say that that's more of the government cover-up, and that all counter evidence is just like the government all covering it up. So that's pretty much it.
Why would the government keep it a secret? They are. They are.
Because the government is, I don't know.
Sounds pretty suspicious, doesn't it?
I don't know. All these people just kind of are like sci-fi buffs that don't really like the government. So,
No, but why? No, why is the government keeping? I mean, the government is keeping it secret. Why?
maybe
Why
because
is the government?
aliens are already among us.
No, not what the conspiracy theorists think. Why is the U.S. government? I mean, they are. They acknowledge Area 51.
Oh, national, like, so other countries can't like steal our weapons and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
National security.
Now the spy national security. That's what I was trying to say. We were miscommunicating.
Okay.
See, you know that little.
I was like,
Now it's totally distracted you from the aliens there, right?
I don't know what I believe.
Who do you believe in?
No.
Disagree with it.
The alien part of it.
You don't believe the alien part. You believe there's a government.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a government.
There is.
So we're halfway there. Yeah, we're getting the whole truth out now. The truth is out there.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who buy this completely connected to Roswell and White Cabins and Air Force Base, all kinds of stuff. All right, good job. Yeah, Area 51. Do we know the difference between a conspiracy and a conspiracy theory then? So what is a conspiracy theory?
believe other
Like,
people
you
work
believe that
together.
it's a conspiracy.
Yeah, they believe there's a conspiracy. You have evidence? Maybe. What is a conspiracy?
So one or more people work together to commit a crime.
One on one person.
Well, not plot something,
And actually commit a crime.
they commit a crime. Yeah. They might, might involve plotting it too, but that could be the crime, but there has to be some kind of crime involved. All right, so we got them all. And so it is connected to one world government, the Underground Railroad, because that's where the reptoids live. This is, as the music picks up, let me be clear about this and gets more dramatic. You can't prove these wrong. Can you? Because every time you prove something, Robert said it correctly. Ah, what have you just done? You're just covering it up here. So these become almost like a religion in some ways, even if there are true conspiracy theories. Some of the conspiracy, obviously I think those are really interesting how they actually did it. And I would catch them, yeah, they're trying to think of the SR-71 at Area 51, that's planning to fly Mach 3, fastest plane ever flying. And they didn't want the Russians to know until LBJ couldn't help but to brag. And it's true in 1964, look what we got. But you can always tell whenever when they flew the SR-71, all of a sudden spottings of UFOs went up. Same with the B-2 stealth bomber, UFOs. Alien technology.
That pancake plane.
Pancake plane's awesome. Maneuver. Yeah.
Are there cults that like start out of conspiracy theories?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to do cults. A lot of the cults you're going to find out have some kind of theory of, something about that. They're trying to hide the world being destroyed. They have apocalyptic ideas that are going to happen. And so, yeah, they do have that conspiracy theory. All right. So tomorrow will be the test. And I guess I got to tell you, let me do this real quick. We went through a lot. Are there any questions from the different presentations? What might be on there? Corey, do you have a question?
No.
So there'll be something about the moon landing. I just have a couple of really basic things. Well, obviously that we did not land on the moon. Now I might argue other humans did, but we did not. So don't tell people we did. So there'll be a couple about that, and I'll probably ask a couple about the Kennedy assassination. Oh, movies. I might ask something about the connection of the Cold War to movies, something like that. That'd be a good one, because I mentioned the 50s horror movies. You haven't had that on the test. And then about the presentations. Any questions on the presentations? It has to be more question than what will be on the test. No, but if it's one you're not sure about, I'll be glad to answer. So, for example, you will have to know all the words of Strawberry Fields Forever for David's one. So let me take you down. There's only two. Yes.
Yeah, he just said that.
No, I'll ask you a short idea about that. You have to use it. Hey. And yeah, you already did ask that. But when they say that, you have to use the example from which one of the movies, okay? Any questions? So to give you an example, I'm talking about, like Savannah's on the Holocaust deniers. David Irving, because he's by far the best known. He's a best-selling author, and I would argue a horrible person. But he's a classic example of someone pushing the Holocaust denial belief. And for Hitler Alive, there were a couple different things, but maybe Mengele and something about Chile or Argentina, something about that. And Masons, just a few things about the early presidents. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the Masons I could ask. Yeah. They were deists. The great architect. A deist. What's a symbol for a Mason?
Compass is what?
Yeah, compass is straight edge. Yeah, square, which also compass is straight edge. Yeah, because they're Masons. I mean, literally. Masons. This is putting bricks on top of each other. The word was gone. Any others? So, since we had one group of two people, the plot to kill Hitler, I'll ask a few questions from that one. The other one's one or two questions. I know I could ask more, but we have 19 presentations, so I don't want to get too many. Marilyn Monroe, a couple things about the plot, maybe who. Peter Lawford always be a good one. He was the last one to call her. He was in the Ocean's 11, the first one with Frank Sinatra. That's tidbits that somehow was in my head. October Surprise, so it's something about the hostage crisis, something about Reagan, that should be those kind of questions. Paul is dead. I know there's a lot of things there, but car crash or the funeral procession on the Sgt. Pepper's or Abbey Road would probably be the biggest one. Maybe I hope it's a dramatic moment. Princess Diana, there'd be a couple different ones, but something about maybe Dottie, the royal family, the paparazzi. Hurricane Katrina, the weather gun. But, and that's fits in with the plan in Washington, D.C. No question then? Yeah.
Did you finish your stuff on Jeff?
Yeah, there'll be a couple more things I'll tell you. I didn't tell you about Ruby.
You're on Howard Brennan.
Oh, Howard Brennan. Okay, you want me to finish real fast? And I got to mention what happened to Ruby. Ruby really is a mystery. Because there's no way you get around one simple thing. Oh, do you have any questions? I didn't wait. There's no way to get around, even with the eyewitness. Ruby shooting the president really is weird. I mean, that does lead, even though he was under custody, into the chaos of the Dallas Police Department. Oswald is being held. They didn't keep people out. You can just wander the halls of the Dallas Police Department, which is crazy today.
Did you just
Oswald.
did you just say that Ruby shot the president?
Did I say Ruby shot the president?
Yeah, so it's just a little.
Yeah, did you see the movie? He was flying, he had the guns in the car. By the way, they say that, remember the Beverly Oliver in the movie who said, she met Leon Oswald of the CIA. And all of a sudden Garrison said, we can't have her, they'll destroy her, but we'll have everybody else. Her story had changed so many times that, I mean, it was just like, we can't even put it in the movie. We mention it, but we can't put it in the trial because no way in the actual trial. But that's why that's there. Is that where we finished? Just a few more things in. Sorry. I'm getting rid of all. What the heck? Sorry, I'm not. So I showed you Howard Brennan. Let me show you a couple more things. A guy named Amos Lee Ewens took a picture right before or right after the first part of the motorcade went by. He was standing right there. And it's hard to see right here, but I'll show you the picture in just a second. But you can barely just make out, see the guy right there? See the white t-shirt? It's white. And then it's hard to make out here and here, but there are people right there. There were 3 workers at the Texas School Book Depository. And there they are. And they were the workers laying the new floor that they said in the movie. They were just people who worked in the Texas School Book Depository. And Bonnie Ray Williams and Harold Norman were right below. This is taken right after the assassination. See the box set right there? And they could hear the bolt of the bolt action of the rifle, and they could hear the cartridges. When you open the bolt, it expels the used cartridge. They could hear it while that was all going on. So they could hear it, and they could hear it hit the ground. They're the ones laying the floor. They weren't new workers. They just worked They used workers who worked at the Texas School Book Depository.